Today we're looking at the Technicals 55 litre, 55 plus actually it says. We'll have a look at what the plus might be later. And it hasn't come in a package or box or anything, simply because I bought it off the shelf in a shop called Millets. I'll put the label down there. And the very first thing I'm going to talk about is the price. The price I paid for this was £45, so we're not talking a lot of money. I was a little bit annoyed because I bought this in a town called Scarborough, and on my way back I was going to call in to Doncaster to go outdoors, and it turns out that Go Outdoors and this shop Millets, where I got this, are all part of the same chain, so you'd expect everything to be the same price. But no, I've got a discount card for Go Outdoors and it was £5 cheaper, so in Go Outdoors it's only £40, whereas me, I've just paid £5 more than I needed done. If I'd just been patient and waited till the following day, I'd have had an extra £5 in my pocket. Anyway, it is what it is. So I'm just going to give a quick run through of the features on this, and then we're going to think about taking it out and giving it a test. So I'll start at the bottom. First thing you notice is they've got these straps at the bottom which will enable you to attach anything you want underneath the bottom pouch. There's also a zip here, and this is for you to access the rain cover. Now I'm not going to pull it all the way out, but suffice to say I did pull it all the way out in the shop before I bought it, and I checked it out. I'm not a red man, me personally, but that's the colour and it will do the job, hopefully. Now I've gone and caught the material there in the zip, but no, it's something to watch out for. Right, we've closed that up. So the first bit of storage we come to is the bottom pouch here. Now I would normally keep something like a sleeping bag in here, but it's not as big as I was expecting. It is actually separated from the top part of the rucksack by, I'm not sure if you can see it from there, we'll have a look anyway, by another internal zip here. And so that would keep whatever was in there separate from whatever you put in the top. Next thing is on the back here, we've got fixings for your walking poles or your ice axe or whatever you want to slot in there. On the side we've got the padded waist straps and the padded shoulder straps, and along with them we've got a pouch here which will be big enough for a water bottle, I would imagine, and we've got a side pouch here which feels quite spacious, but I think this is where the 55 plus comes in. If the rucksack's full inside, this space probably isn't very much at all, but it's there and it's useful. Also on the side you've got these straps here that you can compress the rucksack down into a smaller size if required, and I've found that they're useful for attaching other things too. Same at the other side. In the centre here we've got a map pouch which is big enough to hold a normal OS map. Just opening the top up so I can get inside. So the top's got a tie off there where we can reduce, and it's got quite a lot of overlap lip here, which I think is quite useful. Now I aren't going to put the camera inside for you to have a look, but suffice to say, inside there is another pouch that comes halfway up the interior, and that would enable you to put things in to separate them from other items in the rucksack. I find sometimes if you know important things you want are in that little pouch there, it's easier to find. Moving further up now, the lid. The lid, it's got a reasonably sized pouch here, and the same, the top lid seems quite spacious. I'll tell you when I put all my stuff in, we'll see what it's like. There's a little clip here for putting your keys onto. Always useful with me because I'm always losing keys. And turning it round, it's got a small back adjustment, not massive, but sufficient to probably be able to make it a little more comfortable. And you've got the adjusting straps here for the top of the shoulder pads, so you can pull it in tight and get it nice and snug on your shoulders. Little grab handle here, which I always find useful as well when you're shipping stuff into vehicles, trains, aeroplanes. And I'm not going to pull this all the way off, but this is Velcro, and that gives you access to the support bars here. I guess if you wanted to remove the back in here for whatever reason, that would give you access to that. So I think that's about it. Whenever I do these bag reviews, I always miss something. So if I do, I'll tell you at the end. Yeah, so there we have it. Technicals 55 litre Tibet. Is it any good? Well, what we'll do is we'll take it out for a little trip. We'll have a look at it while we're out there, and when I come back I'll give you my full opinion. Well, here we are, out on the hills. We've had a day and a night with the rucksack. Now what you can see me doing here is I'm compressing my sleeping bag down as far as I can. So first thing to mention is this compartment at the bottom here, which ideally I like to pack the sleeping bag in. Sleeping bag at the bottom, tent the first thing out at the top. And it's quite small. I would say you need to be using a 2-season bag, something that isn't too bulky to fit in here. Now this is a 4-season bag, and I know it goes in there, and this is not going to be easy, simply because this is a 4-season bag. It's a Rab Neutrino 600, and I brought this because it's a fleece, what do they call it, hydrophobic down, that's the word, forget the fleece, hydrophobic down. That's supposed to mean that if it gets slightly damp, it returns to its proper state quicker than if it gets wet, in which case you're buggered. Anyway, I've got to get this in this compartment, and initially when I first tried I thought that there was no way it was going to fit, but by compressing it even further than I would normally, I did manage to get it in. So we'll have a go for the second time and see what happens. As you see, I'm having to pull it tight, and I'm quite worried about breaking the zips, because what you've got to remember is the price. When we ran through the specs on this, the price was very cheap, and when you pay cheap you get cheap. But I wasn't allowed to buy anything more expensive because I bought this tent, and that didn't go down well at all when she found out how much it was. She who must be obeyed. She's a lovely woman, really. After I made my excuses, she said, oh, all right then, go on. I mentioned things like, it's going to save me in bad weather. I'm not going to die if I have this tent. That usually works. So it's got a zip at both sides, so I've zipped up that way. I'm now going to zip up this way, squidge in. It's not been made any easier by the fact that I do have a couple of bits already in the bottom of the rucksack. So yeah, think about the size of whatever you're going to put in the bottom of here. Now, I've had a chance to look closely at this, and I'll just zoom in on the little things. You can notice that the stitching is not brilliant, and like I said, with what you pay for this, you've got to expect some compromising. I'm doing 4 days out here. Personally, I think this pack is more suited to one-night expeditions in summer, but it is what it is. This is what I've got, and we'll see how it goes from there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pack everything away, and it's quite tight, but so far I've found that everything's worked, nothing's broken yet, all the zips are still intact, and the only thing I would say is, well, I keep saying this, the only thing I would say is a few things I am saying. That's because I don't know what I'm talking about half the time. But anyway, although you've got these padded straps, they're not as substantial as you'd expect to find on a more expensive bag. So I'm carrying probably the maximum weight that you want in this, which is about 34 pounds. And unless I'm wearing a jacket, say it was summer and I had a t-shirt on, you can feel these aren't quite as comfortable as you'd expect on a more expensive bag. But the adjustment's good. I've been able to fit it to my back. Whether that suits you, that'll depend on your size, build, height, but for me it's okay. A couple of things I would have liked, but then of course the price would have gone up, would have been some pockets on here, and I would have found it useful to have a strap that comes over the top of the bag, just to pop my jacket in when I'm not wearing it. As it is, I'd trap it between the straps on the back here. So yeah, we'll progress a bit further with it, and we'll see whether it lasts out the 3-4 days that it's going to be dragged around these hills with me. Well, rucksack, blah, blah, take two. Well, rucksack's packed. It's not the ideal size for winter backpacking if you're going out for more than a day or two, simply because there's not enough space. Now, I've managed to get everything in, but I've had to bring all the lightest weight gear I can get that packs up the smallest. The biggest problem I've got is I've brought my puffer jacket, because on the nights, like this morning, it was freezing and then 2 degrees. So the puffer jacket is taking up quite a bit of space in the bottom of here. But it's packed in a way that I've got my sleeping bag there. I would have liked to get my waterproofs inside. It's not necessary. I always tie them off with an extra bit of something. The last time I came up here, I got to the top and my tent, which was tied in there, gone, disappeared. Yeah, I had to walk 3/4 of the way back down the mountain to find the damn thing. So now I always tie things off just in case these straps come loose while we're out and about. Also inside we've got the blow-up airbed, got a pillar, little blow-up pillar. Don't go anywhere without my pillar. Even if you've got nothing else and you collapse and you can't walk any further, it's nice to have a soft pillar to lay your head on. The tent goes in the top, because that's, if it's raining, that's going to be the very first thing I want. The waterproofs I'll be wearing, obviously. Was surprised at how much space there was actually in this top 2 pouches, the inner and the outer, where I've got all sorts of stuff in there. I've got batteries for the camera and remote microphones, because if it's windy you won't be able to hear me unless I've got the remote on, and various other things. I've got a book in there as well, which takes up quite a bit of space, because I'm a bit old-fashioned like that. I prefer books to reading books off my phone. And this thing here, you don't want to know what this is. It says Hydra Pack. Maybe you do. Yeah, it's got two uses, this. It's expandable, and I use it, as I said, for two things. I use it for putting water in or peeing in. Yeah, I told you wanted to know. So nothing worse than being in a camp for 2 or 3 nights and you want to go for a wee. So to save me getting out the tent or just hanging it out the door, this is what I use. Now you might think, that's a bit unhygienic, isn't it? He's using his pee bottle to put drinking water in. Not really. Rinse it out, put some drinking water in, it's good. I mean, in survival situations, you can use drinking water and pee mixed up, or pee on his own if it's nice and fresh. I wouldn't want to do it. I haven't tried it. But yeah, so if I can drink my own pee without dying, then a little dribble in the bottom of there mixed with my water isn't going to do any harm. Okay, enough of the waffle, let's get on. Well, here I am, back from my little trip, and as you can see by the fact that I'm squinting, we've got the sun out, and for the first time I've been able to expose bare flesh. Don't get excited. Doing a bit of bird watching in the garden. This is Sid Crow. He doesn't do a lot until the wind blows. Anyway, we'll leave him to one side and we'll come back to what we are supposed to be talking about. Well, there it is, back in one piece, which I have to say did surprise me. So the first observation that I'm going to make is, I mentioned the stitching, and overall all the stitching has stayed together. I did at one point hear a little crack as I lifted it up onto my shoulder that had that distinctive sound of a bit of cotton snapping. I can't find anything too serious. I've looked over the whole bag, especially the lifting system, because I think that this is where the weak point is going to be, where you're pulling it up, swinging it up onto your shoulder, lifting the bag with this. And so it's been mentioned in other reviews. I haven't had that issue, but I think that could be a weak point. Now, when you spend more time with the bag, you get to notice that all the stitching is quite poorly finished off, so there's little strands here, there and everywhere. But it stood up to it was supposed to be a 4-day trip, but it started to rain, and me being an old softy, I just went back to the car and came home. I know, bit of a wimp. But the rain cover, I can't really vouch for how good it'd be, because when I say rain, I left before the rain got really bad. But it was a good shower, and the rain cover worked. I can't really vouch for if you're in torrential rain for hour after hour. It stood up pretty well. Now, what I would say is the weight I was carrying. I was carrying, it worked out with the water, 36 pounds. Now, I would advise that you don't use this particular rucksack for that type of weight. I would say 28 pounds tops. I don't know what the design weight is for this, but I just had the feeling that 36 pounds was pushing it on the limit to what this stitching could probably take when you started throwing it around. It was, as I mentioned earlier, not as comfortable as I'd have hoped with the shoulder pads. It wasn't uncomfortable. I could go all day and live with it, but again, it's a compromise on the price. If I'd paid £100 for this, I probably had a lot more comfortable straps. The waistband worked okay, I didn't have an issue with that. And all the buckles are still intact. You'll notice as well, compared to an expensive rucksack, the buckles look a little bit cheap. But that's because they are. That's what it is. It's a cheap rucksack. But all in all, for the price, I mean, as a rucksack, I'd only give it 3 out of 5. But for somebody who doesn't want to spend much money and wants an occasional rucksack for the occasional 1 or 2 nights out, with a little tent and a sleeping bag, I think it's okay. I really won't know how substantial the stitching is and the fixings until I've used it a lot more. But it managed 3 days with £36 in, and the rough handling that I have a habit of giving things. So, yeah, the choice is yours. Just make sure you get that for 40, not 45. But you'll need a discount card at Go Outdoors to be able to do that. So that's it for this little review. On to the next one. See you then.